Levack and Goss here with you on 104.5 The Team and 104.5theteam.com. Matt Woods in for Levack, but this guy's not taking any time off with us. It is ESPN's Buster Olney. Buster, the Yankees continue their losing ways. Why are the Yankees having so many issues right now in the bullpen?
Yeah, that's a surprise. You figure the talent level that they have down there that it would be better. It just might be one of those situations where they're going through a down cycle. Every team goes through slumps with that sort of thing. I do believe this, and I know from talking with folks with other organizations, they believe the Yankees will add a bullpen piece before the trade deadline. Whether it's a guy like a Brad Hand of the San Diego Padres or a Pat Neshek of the Philadelphia Phillies. At some point, they're probably going to bolster their depth. I think one thing that's been fairly well established at this point is that when Dellin Betances is asked to close, he's not always comfortable, and we saw that with the White Sox on Tuesday.
Even though Levack is not here, he has texted into the show, believe it or not.
Of course he has.
And I'm going to read this word for word, so you can yell at me for even reading this word for word. Is Joe Girardi in trouble?
Because really? You really should be ashamed to even read that thing. You should have just texted back saying, I can answer that. No. They played great early in the year. They're fine. His contract's up at the end of the year anyway, just like Terry Collins' contract is up. And if they want to make a change at the end of the year, they could. But now, in the middle of the year, when they're in first place, how crazy is that?
Thank you, Buster. I'm glad you get to yell at him even when he's off. Buster Olney joining us here on Levack and Goz on 104.5 The Team.
Buster, you were on Mike and Mike yesterday, and you talked about Aaron Judge possibly having the best rookie season ever. And you mentioned the stat adjusted OPS plus, which I thought was a pretty interesting stat that I never heard of, so I had to look it up. But is this really the best rookie season we have ever seen?
It's possible, and it was one of those numbers that just jumped out at you. I was just trying to put his season into context, and so I asked one of our researchers to come up with a list, and it's just shocking. First off, the greatest, according to adjusted OPS plus, which is a great stat because it basically compares players against their era and how dominant were they compared to their times, and that way you can measure, how dominant one rookie is against another rookie. And the greatest rookie season, according to adjusted OPS plus, is Shoeless Joe Jackson in 1911, who rated a 193. In other words, 93% better than the average player at that time. Mike Trout in 2012, his rookie season was, I think, a 168. That number might be off a little bit, but he was far behind Shoeless Joe Jackson. Aaron Judge is second behind Shoeless Joe Jackson. His number's 192, okay? So he's right behind Shoeless Joe. All I know is that if you can be on a chart with Shoeless Joe Jackson at number 1 from 1911 and Mike Trout at number 4 at 168 and you're 192, that's pretty good. The other thing, too, is that I do think that we're seeing the rest of the league beginning to recognize how good he is because the number of walks that he's drawing. Going into that game on Tuesday, he had drawn, in the month of June, 22 walks, 50 for the season. And I asked Sarah Langs, who does a great job on our research, hey, how many rookies have drawn 100 walks? The total in the modern era after 1920 is 5. The last rookie to draw 100 walks, and Aaron Judge right now is on a pace to draw about 110, was Junior Gilliam for the Dodgers in 1953. Okay? And the record for rookies in the modern era is Ted Williams with 107. Aaron Judge might break Ted Williams' rookie record in his first year in the big leagues.
Amazing stuff there from Aaron Judge. He's been incredible and historic as Buster Olney's laid out there. He's been amazing. Chris Carter hasn't been amazing. He's now been designated for assignment. Tyler Austin gets the call up. Is Austin, how badly is he needed for the Yankees? And when Greg Bird finally returns, could he be the missing piece that gets the Yankees back in maybe a bigger lead in the AL East standings?
Well, what you're going to see over the next 5 weeks before the trade deadline is a series of auditions, okay? And Tyler Austin's getting the first one. You imagine it like a casting call, standing outside of a studio, and directors are standing there. Tyler Austin's the first guy on stage, and if he kills it, then he'll get the job. And if he doesn't, Greg Bird will get a shot. And if Greg Bird doesn't get it done, then they're going to dive into the trade market. And it does look like there could be a lot of guys available For example, I think at some point the Braves are probably going to have to move Matt Adams. The Oakland Athletics have been calling around other teams, offering around Yonder Alonso, who's probably going to make the American League All-Star team. There are 3 or 4 other guys. It is going to absolutely be a buyer's market for position players, in particular for corner outfielders, even to the point where you wonder if at some point, if the Mets have an opportunity just to dump money, if they would call the Yankees and say, look, you don't have to give us anything really in return, that much in return for Jay Bruce, but please just take on his salary. And who knows, maybe Jay Bruce winds up playing some first base for the Yankees.
Buster, you also broke that the Mets could possibly be sellers during this season before the trade deadline. Is that such a good thing for the Mets, and who's going to be on the block in order to go other places?
Well, what they informed other teams is that anyone who was a potential free agent is up for auction. And if someone wants to call about, a Curtis Granderson, about a Jay Bruce, about a Asdrubal Cabrera, they're all ears. I don't think there's any doubt that among the guys they have, the player who probably has the most trade value is Addison Reed, their veteran reliever. The trade market for position players is going to be really weird this summer because when you look at the contenders, they don't need position players. The Nationals aren't really looking for position players. The Dodgers aren't. The Diamondbacks aren't. The Rockies aren't. The Red Sox, yes, they need a third baseman, but they don't have a general need to upgrade their offense. The Yankees really, besides first base, they're not really out there. And so it's not going to be a good summer to market position players. And I think that's part of the reason why the Mets got the word out there early that they're open for business, because I think they're going to try to dump some salary before we get to the deadline.
ESPN's Buster Olney joins us here on 104.5, the team on Levack and Goz. And one of these stories Woods and I were looking at today is this story involving Miguel Montero and the Chicago Cubs. For those that may not know, what exactly happened here with the defending World Series champions?
Okay, so the Cubs were playing the Nationals on Tuesday. Jake Arrieta on the mound, who's notoriously slow in his delivery. And the Nationals stole 7 bases, including 4 from Trey Turner in the first 3 innings. Trey Turner at one point stole third base without a throw. And so, of course, reporters went up to the Cubs catcher after the game, Miguel Montero, and asked him about it. And I'll clean up what he said.
Thank you.
The language. But he basically said, it stinks that I get charged with those stolen bases, that the catcher gets charged with the stolen bases. Pitcher didn't give me a chance. He was so slow. And that got a strong reaction from within the Cubs organization. Anthony Rizzo, their first baseman, de facto captain, went on radio in Chicago today and said somebody who says something like that is selfish. And obviously the front office agrees because they designated Montero for assignment. Wow. They cut him from the team.
Wow.
And they called up a minor leaguer to take a spot on the roster. This is a guy who, 33 years old. He's a veteran catcher, a left-handed hitter, got some big hits for the Cubs last year, coming off the bench at times, and yet here we are. He's out of a job, and the Cubs front office is known as an analytics-heavy front office, but this is a classic case where they demonstrate they also believe in clubhouse chemistry. And I've heard around the edges that's been a problem for the Cubs this year.
I'm trying to think of another thing I can compare this to in baseball over the last 10 to 15 years where they had so much faith in the clubhouse and in one guy, they were willing to get rid of a catcher. Can you think of an example of anything like this that we've seen in years?
Well, I mean, yes. Nomar Garciaparra, when the Red Sox traded him, and look, there are two sides to every story, but I do think the Red Sox felt like at that time when they dealt him, that was after that game that went extra innings, and Nomar was seen in the Red Sox dugout where he wasn't going to pinch hit, and so the Red Sox dumped him right after that. And I know within the Red Sox organization, they felt like that that Nomar was cancerous in that clubhouse at that time. And then 4 years after that, if you remember, Manny Ramirez demonstrated he was not going to try. He wanted a new contract. He was unhappy. So the Red Sox ate money to dump him in a trade that went where he went to the Dodgers. And we know that the Cubs believe in chemistry because when they signed John Lester, part of the agreement there, the understanding was that, oh, by the way, we'll also sign your personal catcher, David Ross, who was considered to be incredibly important to the Cubs' chemistry. And that's, as I mentioned, I've heard around the edges that without Ross there, it's kind of a vacuum and they're having some clubhouse problems.
We know your schedule's a little bit different here as we get close to the July 4th weekend. Where can we see Buster Olney? What are you up to the next few days?
I am going to St. Louis we have this weekend on Sunday night the Nationals against the Cardinals, Max Scherzer against Carlos Martinez, two likely All-Stars both pitching in that game, so I'm pretty fired up for that game. And then we've got the last Sunday night before the All-Star break, we've got the Indians and the Tigers.
There it is. Buster Olney, appreciate your time. We'll talk again next week. Take care.
Okay, guys, take care.